telling that India has told the UK that BBC must comply with the existing rules and regulations. Sources say that UK's Foreign Secretary brought up the BBC tax issue during his meeting with the External Affairs Minister. Remember, all the foreign ministers for the G20 foreign ministers meet are now ascending on the national capital. And UK's foreign minister said that he was firmly told that all entities operating in India must comply fully with relevant laws and regulations. This is the latest that we are bringing to you. This is a big development, something that was perhaps on expected lines. I'm also joined in by managing editor Zaka Jacob live from the newsroom. Zaka, important to in fact put this into perspective, how this was expected to in fact crop up, but let's in fact give it to India's External Affairs Minister for successfully conveying the message as well.
In fact, so this happened in the meeting between James Cleverly and External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, where we're given to understand that it was the British Foreign Secretary who raised this matter first about the BBC tax raids and concerns that Britain had. Remember, this issue had figured in the British Parliament as well last week, where a representative of the government had talked about how they are standing with the BBC and with the freedom of press. But when this issue was brought up in the meeting between the British Foreign Secretary and India's Foreign Minister, sources in the government of India are telling us that he was told absolutely firmly that all entities that are operating out of India must fully comply with relevant laws and regulations. So I think I wouldn't put it as a telling off, but clearly very firmly and very assertively the message was conveyed to the British Foreign Secretary that if the BBC wants to do business here in India, wants to operate from India, then they have to comply with whatever relevant Indian laws and provisions are. So I think we don't know what the fallout of this could likely be, right. But I think this is sort of drawing the line that look, we don't have anything against any media organization, whether it's the BBC or any other foreign media organization, but that cannot be a ruse, or that doesn't mean that the government will go easy when it comes to tax rules and compliance with tax rules in India, because after all, the BBC India is an entity that is operating out of India, and it has to comply with the relevant tax provisions and the tax laws of India. So I think that message has been very clearly now sent to the British Foreign Secretary. How he conveys this to his bosses back in London, what he tells the Prime Minister of Britain, Rishi Sunak, that'll also be interesting. Also remember, the Conservative Party has been facing some opposition in the British Parliament about how the government, the Tory government led by Mr. Sunak, is not voicing enough strongly against these tax raids and so on. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this plays out domestically between Labour and Tories in British politics as well, because Sunak's government has been under some Labour pressure on this issue.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you spoke about how Sunak's government has been drawing enough criticism for this, because let's not forget, it was just some days ago that David Rutley, the Parliamentary Under Secretary for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs, had in fact in House of Commons debate raised this issue, and the government made it very clear even during that debate that we stand up for the BBC, we fund the BBC, we think that the BBC World Service is vitally important, and we will always take up for it.
It had become a political issue, a bit of a back and forth, if you will, between the Conservatives and the Labour Party. It got raised, like you said, last week in the British Parliament, and David Rutley was speaking on behalf of the government. He said that we do stand by the BBC and we do stand for press freedom. We fund the BBC. The British taxpayer, of course, pays for the BBC and its license fees. So clearly, that was an attempt to try and tell the British public, and perhaps even to try and quell the opposition, that the government is not, or at least is being seen as not doing enough on this issue. But as far as India is concerned, I think the line has been drawn by the External Affairs Minister in his meeting with James Cleverly, the British Foreign Secretary, where he has clearly said that, look, whichever entity operates in India has to comply with relevant tax provisions. I think what the government of India is also trying to create a distinction is that, look, this is not a case where you're going after the ability of a media organization to report in a free and fair manner. This is more a financial regulation issue. This is more a tax provisions and tax laws compliance issue. And I think you shouldn't conflate one with the other. I think that distinction is also being made by the External Affairs Ministry and in the minister's comments reportedly to his British counterpart, that look, don't look at this as the government clamping down on press freedom, because the government has not stopped the BBC from reporting, or any other media organization for that matter, foreign or Indian, from reporting on stories. But this is a case of tax compliance or the lack of it, and that should be the same for any entity that is operating in India, and certainly the BBC in India does operate out of this country, so has to comply with the tax provisions of this country.
And Zaka, before I quickly let you go, how do you see such an issue now being raised at a multilateral geopolitical conference like the G20 foreign ministers meet? Is this also going to gain international dimensions? Because I remember one of the Liberal Democrats, MP Jamie Stone, had in fact called for the UK government to also involve the United States.
Look, I think this story, like I said, James Cleverly has brought this up because of the domestic pressure that his party is facing in the House of Commons. We saw that debate last week as well, where a government representative was forced to respond to this. So yes, I think for that domestic consumption, this issue was raised. Let's